Seriously, look how big it is. I don't think it is a human. I think it's a Sasquatch.
It was a bluebird January morning here in the foothills of northeast Provo when a group of guys saw a figure on the mountain that looked like something they've never seen before.
Since the first sighting of this mysterious creature, new videos, photos, and even an FBI investigation have made it hard to completely dismiss the idea that Bigfoot might not just be a legend after all. Bigfoot's first footage. It was shot on such an old, clunky camera that experts have been tweaking and stabilizing it for more than 50 years. Meanwhile, technology has leaped forward. Better cameras are now in over 1 billion hands. The problem is that the internet is flooded with so many fake sightings that it's tough to separate fact from fiction. But don't worry, we have gone through countless videos and pictures to find the most convincing ones that might just prove Bigfoot is out there. Jacob's trail cam and the FBI. One of the least debunkable pieces of evidence comes from a trail cam set up by hunter Rick Jacobs.
A hunter from Pennsylvania claims he took a picture of Bigfoot.
Rick Jacobs posted this picture on the Bigfoot Research Organization website. Says it appears to be a juvenile Sasquatch.
For those unfamiliar, trail cams are those nifty cameras you strap to trees to catch wildlife on film. Hunters use them to figure out where animals like deer and bears hang out. Jacobs was hoping to track some deer, but what his camera captured in September 2007 was something so bizarre that even the Associated Press couldn't ignore it. The photo shows a hairy creature crouched on 2 feet with a muscle structure that's way more ape-like than bear-like.
Allegheny National Forest, but he will not tell us the exact location, so thousands of Bigfoot fans don't show up to it. The Pennsylvania Game Commission says it appears to be a bear with a severe case of skin disease.
It looked too skinny to be a bear, but too tall to be any ape we know of. The picture was taken in Pennsylvania's Allegheny National Forest, though Jacobs didn't share the exact location, probably to keep curious Bigfoot hunters from swarming the area. When the photo was released, it caused quite a stir. People who were skeptical or undecided about Bigfoot suddenly became believers. Why? Well, first of all, other photos taken by the same camera showed clear images of bear cubs, and they looked nothing like the mysterious creature in the suspect photo. Secondly, experts couldn't match the creature to any known animal. Despite all this, the Pennsylvania Game Commission brushed it off, saying it was just a bear. But if you've ever seen a bear, you'd likely agree that what Jacobs caught on camera was no ordinary animal. To this day, the Jacobs Trail Cam Bigfoot remains one of the most talked about pieces of evidence keeping the Sasquatch debate alive. And here's where things get even wilder. Did you know that the FBI once got involved in the Bigfoot mystery? Yep, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Now, why would the FBI bother looking into a creature most people call a myth?
FBI investigates many serious problems, from domestic intelligence to election interference, but Bigfoot? That too, apparently. Wednesday, the FBI released documents about a 1976 investigation into the mythical creature. Federal investigators had responded to a request from Peter Byrne, the director of the Bigfoot Information Center and Exhibition.
The answer lies with a man named Peter Byrne. Peter Byrne wasn't just some casual Bigfoot fan. He spent nearly his entire life searching for the creature, from his teenage years until his passing at the age of 97. Byrne wasn't the type to fake a sighting or manipulate evidence just to grab attention. In fact, he was so honest that he openly admitted he'd never seen Bigfoot face to face, which made everything else he claimed feel more credible. Among his most famous discoveries were massive 14-inch footprints in the Pacific Northwest.
It's wrong. I think it's very wrong. In fact, I think it's criminal, just about.
Peter Byrne, a big game hunter turned naturalist, looks for Bigfoot with little more than a camera. He says his research project is a benign operation.
I think it's very wrong to say shoot one to prove that it's there, and we're very much against that.
Back in 1976, Byrne investigated 2 Bigfoot sightings near Mount Hood. Multiple people claimed to have seen something unusual, and Byrne quickly tracked down 2 witnesses who led him to the exact spot. After a long hike, Byrne didn't find the creature itself, but he did find those enormous footprints. Instead of spinning the story into a headline-grabbing hoax, Byrne focused on finding solid, testable evidence. He collected hair and tissue samples snagged on a tree where the creature had supposedly passed through. Then came the tricky part, finding a lab willing to analyze them. With no luck elsewhere, Byrne took a bold step. He reached out to the FBI. Now the FBI wasn't exactly in the business of testing random hair and tissue samples, especially ones tied to cryptids.
The Washington Post tells us that the legend of Bigfoot was so fascinating to a man named Peter Byrne that he actually became an expert on it. And after one such sighting, he sent a clump of hairs that he believed belonged to Bigfoot to the FBI, asking them to test it.
But Byrne played it smart. He sent a polite letter to the FBI, asking if they'd be open to helping him out. To his surprise, they agreed, and he sent in the samples. And then, radio silence. Byrne didn't hear back from the FBI for a whopping 43 years. Imagine waiting that long. Finally, in 2019, declassified FBI documents shed light on what happened. It turns out the FBI had indeed tested the samples, breaking their usual rules to make an exception for Byrne. But when the results came back, they said the samples belonged to a deer. Cue the disappointment.
Sent the hair and skin sample to the FBI for testing. In a letter to the FBI, Byrne said, "I am writing again to ask if you could possibly arrange for a comparative analysis of some hairs that we have here which we are unable to identify."
Some Bigfoot enthusiasts believe this was a deliberate move to suppress evidence or sideline Byrne, who was one of the most prominent Bigfoot researchers of his time. So was the FBI genuinely curious about Bigfoot? Or were they trying to quietly discredit the legend by taking Byrne's evidence out of circulation? Whether you trust the FBI's results or not probably depends on how much faith you have in the government.
The FBI said in 1977 it was concluded as a result of these examinations that the hairs are of deer family origin. The findings came in a response in the mail in the late 70s, but somehow the correspondence was lost. Now 93, Byrne told the Washington Post, "We're just finding this out, and it's disappointing."
Peter Byrne, however, never let that stop him. He continued his search for Bigfoot right up until he passed away at the impressive age of 97. At one point, his team even managed to snap a photo of a massive 14.5-inch footprint deep in the Six Rivers National Forest in Northern California. This moment became one of the earliest examples of using footprints as evidence to prove Bigfoot's existence. But if we're talking about footprints that really make you stop and think, you've got to hear about the ones from Oregon's Blue Mountains. Locals there had been whispering about enormous tracks appearing in the area, and this caught the attention of Jeff Meldrum. Now, Jeff wasn't just any guy with a passing interest in cryptids. He was a professor of anatomy and anthropology, and a self-proclaimed skeptic. His plan? To debunk Bigfoot once and for all. When Meldrum trekked out to the Blue Mountains and found a trail of these mysterious footprints, something changed. As an expert in foot morphology, he immediately noticed that these weren't some clumsy man-made hoax. The spacing, the depth, and even the way the toes moved screamed authenticity. He made plaster casts of the prints and took them back to study. And guess what? Meldrum went from skeptic to full-on Bigfoot believer. What convinced him, and so many others, was the level of detail in the prints. The elongated toes, the natural motion, the alignment. It all matched the specifics of primate movement. If anyone could spot a fake, it'd be Meldrum, a guy who's written books and countless papers on how primates move. But no, these prints seemed real enough to make even a seasoned scientist take the idea of Bigfoot seriously. Now, speaking of footprints, you might be wondering how Bigfoot even got its name. For that, we need to jump back to August 1958, when a newspaper called the Humboldt Times in Eureka, California, published a story about giant footprints found by a man named Jerry Crew. Jerry even made a plaster cast of the print and posed with it for the paper. It was a big deal, but, plot twist, that particular print turned out to be a hoax. A man named Ray Wallace had carved a massive wooden foot and used it to stamp the tracks into the dirt. He even used his truck bed to press down hard enough to avoid leaving any human footprints near the fakes. Wallace kept this little joke a secret until his death at 84, when his family finally spilled the beans. And the weirdest thing? Wallace's prank actually helped prove Bigfoot's existence. Why? Because comparing Wallace's fake plaster casts to the ones Jeff Meldrum found in the Blue Mountains shows a night and day difference. Even a casual observer can spot how one is artificially pressed while the other looks completely natural. Footprints have been reported all over the US, but they don't always get the credit they deserve. Noticeable sightings and encounters. For instance, in 1980, the town of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, buzzed with reports of weird noises, a terrible smell, and a gigantic 17.75-inch footprint. The Associated Press even ran a story with a photo of the print. But since footprints are so easy to fake, and the first ever documented one was proven to be a hoax, they don't hold as much sway with skeptics. That's why, when it comes to Bigfoot evidence, nothing holds a candle to the Patterson-Gimlin film. This legendary footage has been around for over 50 years, and no one has successfully debunked it. The film, shot by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, shows what many believe to be the first authentic video of Bigfoot. Here's how it happened.
Something emerges from the brush, an enormous animal Patterson and Gimlin have never seen before. They think it might be Bigfoot. Patterson and Gimlin then hurry back to their campsite to grab some plaster. They know they're going to need as much proof as possible.
Patterson and Gimlin ventured deep into Northern California's woods, a hotspot for Bigfoot sightings. Patterson was filming with Gimlin, dressed like a cowboy, appearing to be the main focus. Then, out of nowhere, they saw it. An ape-like figure in the distance. Patterson, clearly startled, scrambled to stabilize his camera. In those shaky moments, he managed to capture a few frames of the creature. The most famous moment? When the supposed Sasquatch turns its head to look directly at the camera, that one glance has become iconic. Some say it's a sign of intelligence, as if the creature understood it was being watched. Whatever you believe, one thing's for sure. This film has kept the Bigfoot debate alive and well for decades. If Bigfoot were just another ordinary ape, the mystery wouldn't be half as exciting. But imagine a humanoid ape-like creature with the intelligence to turn and lock eyes with humans as it strolls away. That's the real hook. That infamous look-back moment does more than send chills down spines. It also gives us a glimpse of the creature's anatomy. And guess what? That anatomy checks out pretty well with what we know about great apes. Now skeptics are quick to shout, "It's just a guy in a costume." But experts in special effects and costume design have poured cold water on that theory.
Look at the shape of that muscle. You can't fake that with padding. Look at the consistency of the fur. This is the real deal.
Maybe, but the plot sure does thicken when, in 2002, a costume maker comes forward claiming he made the suit for Roger Patterson.
They argue that creating a costume with such intricate details would have been next to impossible in 1967. Patterson-Gimlin film. A year later, Planet of the Apes hit theaters, showcasing Hollywood's cutting-edge ape costumes. And while those costumes were impressive for their time, they don't hold a candle to the Bigfoot in the Patterson-Gimlin film. The creature in that footage has a natural bulk and muscle movement that screams real in a way no costume from the 60s ever could. The Sasquatch in the Patterson-Gimlin film glides with a fluidity that's hard to fake. Compare that with how actors in Planet of the Apes clunk around in their suits. Side-by-side comparisons of the stabilized Bigfoot footage and scenes from Planet of the Apes make it abundantly clear why the Patterson-Gimlin tape still captivates people more than 5 decades later. Sure, modern cameras and costumes have gotten way better, but that's precisely why new footage is easier to dismiss as a guy in a suit.
Well, by both myself and by scientists and by many other people, and everybody who really gets into that film says there's no way that whatever that is a man in the suit.
Back in 1967, though, pulling off something that convincing would have been a monumental task. And then there's Bob Gimlin's role in all of this. If the tape were fake, wouldn't he have spilled the beans by now? Here's a man who turned down countless interviews, partly because his wife wasn't thrilled about the publicity, but also because he had a massive falling out with Patterson. Patterson and the film's promoter promised Gimlin a third of the profits, but they broke that deal. To make matters worse, Patterson hired a lookalike to play Gimlin during the film's publicity tour, probably because it was cheaper. That betrayal ended their friendship, and Gimlin had zero motivation to keep the story alive. No fame, no fortune, nada. Yet despite all of that, Gimlin has stuck to his guns. He's maintained for decades that the creature he saw with his own eyes wasn't a man in a suit, but the real deal. Why would a disgruntled cowboy with nothing to gain keep lying? That's the kind of question that keeps people hooked on the Patterson-Gimlin film to this day. Their friendship found closure on Patterson's deathbed. Gimlin got a call from Patterson's brother, letting him know that Roger was asking for him. Gimlin decided to visit, and what followed was a heartfelt apology. According to Gimlin himself, Patterson said, "Bob, I apologize. We've got the money, the means, and the equipment. As soon as I get well, you and I are heading to California to capture a Bigfoot." It was a bittersweet moment as Patterson passed away that very evening, leaving behind not just his plans, but also the legacy of the Patterson-Gimlin film, which sparked a worldwide Bigfoot craze. But not everyone's a fan. The film has faced its share of criticism, especially for its grainy quality. Skeptics love to argue that a modern, high-resolution, daytime Bigfoot sighting would settle the debate once and for all. Most recent videos, however, are shot at night, except for one interesting clip, the Independence Day video. Uploaded online and filmed on the 4th of July, this footage showcases what appears to be an adult Bigfoot with a baby. In the clip, the adult disappears behind a boulder, only to re-emerge holding the baby Sasquatch in its arms before vanishing into the bushes. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. A closer look at the video reveals that the creature shares striking similarities with the Sasquatch from the Patterson-Gimlin film. The costume doesn't sag, and the movements, like the high knee lift, are far more natural than what you'd expect from a human in a suit. And that tender moment where the adult Bigfoot cradles the baby? It feels genuine, not staged. Plus, finding a convincing baby Bigfoot costume would be just as tough as creating a believable adult version back in Patterson's time. One of the strongest arguments in favor of the Independence Day video's authenticity is that the uploader remains completely anonymous. No names, no locations, and no attempts to profit from the footage. Despite this, skeptics have poked holes in the story, claiming the person filming seems too calm. Their reasoning? In a real encounter, they'd be freaking out. Which brings us to one of the most compelling Bigfoot sightings ever caught on camera, the Provo Canyon Bigfoot video from October 2012. A group of siblings, thinking they'd spotted a bear, zoomed in from a distance without getting too close. One of the kids asked, "Do you think that's a bear?" Just then, the creature stood up, and let's just say, the kids' panicked reactions were 100% authentic. This raw, genuine fear is part of why the video is so convincing. Even more fascinating? Just a few weeks later, another hiker near Provo Canyon spotted what seemed to be the same creature. This second sighting gets even wilder. The hiker, strolling through Utah's hills, noticed a large animal. But when it stood up, he realized this wasn't your average bear. Gripped by curiosity and a little terror, he whipped out his phone and started recording. At one point, the Bigfoot stood behind a tree, then began throwing rocks at him, a behavior that's been reported in countless Bigfoot encounters, but never documented on camera until this video. Once again, the person filming didn't seek fame or fortune from the footage, adding to its credibility. And let's not forget Josh Highcliff's eerie encounter in Mississippi. While out in the woods, Highcliff spotted what he described as an ape-like creature. He started filming, but when the creature moved, panic set in, and he accidentally stopped the recording. Realizing this, he quickly hit record again, just in time to capture the creature standing up and revealing its towering height. Terrified, Highcliff bolted from the scene. Later, he uploaded the video to YouTube, where it racked up over 1.3 million views. Highcliff didn't upload anything else after that, shutting down any accusations of self-promotion. He speculated that what he saw might have been a skunk ape, often considered the southern cousin of Bigfoot. Each of these sightings adds another layer to the mystery of Bigfoot. Whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or somewhere in between, there's no denying the thrill these stories bring. And with so many unanswered questions, the hunt for Bigfoot continues to capture imaginations around the globe. When it comes to the most compelling evidence for Bigfoot's existence, the Provo Canyon Bigfoot and the Josh Highcliffe humanoid ape seem to be neck to neck. But hey, let me know in the comments which one you think is more convincing. Personally, I find the Jeff Meldrum footprint the hardest to debunk. It just has this undeniable what-if factor that keeps you hooked. Theories and explanations. Now let's dive into some theories, because there are plenty of them. For starters, Bigfoot could simply be an undiscovered species. Think about it. Massive apes roamed the earth long before we did. Ever heard of Gigantopithecus? It was this ginormous ape, 9.8 feet tall and weighing over 660 pounds. Yep, imagine running into that on your morning hike. There's even a replica of Gigantopithecus at the San Diego Museum of Man. And let me tell you, if you saw that today, your first thought would be, that's Bigfoot. These creatures coexisted with early humans, so it's not far-fetched to believe that stories about them have been passed down through generations, even if the creatures themselves are long gone. Skeptics might be satisfied with this explanation, but it doesn't account for the footprints, the videos, and all the other evidence we keep coming across. Sasquatch believers will tell you Gigantopithecus never went extinct. Experts, on the other hand, insist it's been gone for over 100,000 years. But here's the thing. Experts have been wrong about extinctions before. Remember the Laotian rock rat? It was thought to be extinct for millions of years until someone found it chilling in a market in Southeast Asia. Or how about the dawn redwood, which scientists believed was extinct for 65 million years? Spoiler alert, it's alive and well in China. If something as large and ancient as the dawn redwood can stay hidden, why not a massive elusive ape? Then there's the big question. Why are Bigfoot sightings so rare, especially in this era of smartphones? Two solid theories can explain this. One, the Sasquatch doesn't want to be seen.
Bigfoot may be an urban myth to most people, but in the late 70s, the FBI was investigating whether or not Sasquatch really existed.
Think about it. How often do you spot a monkey in the wild? Animal sightings, especially of shy creatures, are pretty uncommon unless you're actively searching. And let's be real, most people aren't trekking through the wilderness with Bigfoot in mind. Two, even when Bigfoot is spotted, it's ridiculously easy to miss. Look at any of the videos we've discussed. In one, there are 3 dark shapes in the forest, and only one of them is supposedly Bigfoot. The other 2, just random shadows. Without movement or some clue, you'd never even notice it was there. And here's a creepy thought. What if thousands of people have seen Bigfoot but didn't live to tell the tale? Every year, over 500,000 people go missing in the US alone. Could some of them have encountered a Sasquatch and gotten a little too close? It's a spine-tingling idea, but critics will say it's as plausible as blaming the tooth fairy. Speaking of critics, they argue that instead of explaining why we don't have concrete evidence, we should focus on the evidence we do have. First up, the trail cam Sasquatch. What looks like a baby Bigfoot doing yoga? Yeah, it could just be a bear with mange. Poor thing. Then there's the Jeff Meldrum footprint cast, but skeptics are quick to point out that Shaquille O'Neal's foot is even bigger. Shaq's size 22 shoes could put a lot of supposed Bigfoot footprints to shame. And that brings us to the Patterson-Gimlin film, the holy grail of Bigfoot evidence. Believers argue that an out-of-work filmmaker like Patterson wouldn't have access to a costume better than anything Hollywood could produce at the time. You must be wondering what the critics have to say about this. They say, sure, it's unlikely he got such a realistic costume, but it's even more unlikely for a Sasquatch to go undetected by zoologists for over 50 years. But wait, did you know mountain gorillas were once thought to be mythical? Yep, until the 1900s, people believed they were just legends. The first recorded description came from a British explorer in the 1600s, who called them monsters covered in hair, except for their face and hands. Sound familiar? Today, we know them as gorillas, but back then, they sounded just like Bigfoot. The same goes for giant pandas. They weren't officially recognized by science until the 20th century, even though locals had known about them for ages. It took 50 years from the first sighting for scientists to accept pandas as real. So, here's my take. Scientists discover around 18,000 new species every year, most of them tiny or microscopic. But history shows they've missed some pretty big ones too. Could Bigfoot be out there, A bipedal ape avoiding detection, showing up only when the camera's too far or too blurry? I'm open to the idea, but even the most compelling evidence so far falls short of proving it. What I found most fascinating while researching this is how many animals, like gorillas and pandas, were once considered myths. What if Bigfoot is just another chapter in that story? After all, the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence.